Hello, everyone. This is BuzzProbe, an interstellar probe to be developed. I'm Charles Lee.
I'm Brittany Brown.
And I'm Jeremy Mullis.
Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of background. The Voyager missions were planned due to an alignment of planets that would allow for a Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune to give gravity assists. In doing so, we figured we could study the outer planets, which was the purpose of the original missions. Since the Voyager missions are currently studying interstellar space, we took heavy inspiration from them. We also took inspiration from the Johns Hopkins Interstellar Probe project, which is based on the New Horizons mission. And for those who don't know, the New Horizons mission is a mission that was to fly by Pluto and study the Kuiper Belt area. But currently, the Voyager missions are running low on power and are using outdated technologies. So we figured it would be better to design a probe specifically for interstellar space using updated technology. Next slide, please. So the mission statement is to design a concept for the first interstellar mission that can deliver a scientific payload of 50 kilograms in 20 years or less, and send data back to Earth for a minimum of 20 years after reaching interstellar space. Next slide, please.
We are including our design process to show what our spacecraft can do, why it's effective, and how well it uses investors' money. This is the preliminary ConOps we created for the mission, and it's divided into 6 phases. Phase 1 is a launch provided by a heavy lift launcher. Phase 2 is the injection to our fuel-saving maneuver using kick stages. Phase 3, the probe is traveling between Earth and the maneuver. This should take about 1 to 2 years. The probe will communicate with Earth via the Deep Space Network from this phase onwards. Phase 4 is the fuel-saving maneuver, pictured here as a Jupiter gravity assist. Phase 5 is a long travel to the heliopause, taking about 14 to 18 years. Science opportunities for Kuiper Belt objects will be taken during this phase. And Phase 6 is the primary science mission, which will last over 20 years. These are our top-level requirements that we came up with for our probe. The mass, time of flight, and lifespan requirements are straight from the problem statement. As the payload is specified as a science payload, we included one requirement to collect scientific data. As we need to collect this data on Earth and control the probe, we also included a communications requirement. The environmental constraints of the mission are included in the temperature/pressure and power requirements. Finally, the probe needs to be able to be controlled by people here on Earth and autonomously when there are communications blackouts, so we covered that in the final top-level requirement.
So as you can see here, our system is going to be divided into 5 different main functions. The first one's going to be launch and travel. Within this function, our probe should escape Earth's sphere of influence and have an increased speed to reach the heliopause. The second function is within the outside of the heliopause. Within this section, our probe is to obtain data, process data, and store data. Then our next function is communication, where the probe should transmit scientific data, diagnose the data, and then receive commands from the ground back to the probe. Our next function is the results, where we are going to be able to validate and analyze the results within the probe and here on Earth, and then distribute the findings to our stakeholders. And then our last function is the end of mission, where we determine whether we should allow our probe to live out its life until it's done, or if it reaches a point where we should terminate the project.
So this is the morphological matrix we used to select the alternatives for our system. We incorporated both functions from the system decomposition and the systems needed to fulfill the requirements. Our launch vehicle was chosen by using a trade study that will be expanded upon in the next few slides. For our other functions, we chose the alternatives that will provide the best performance, the highest efficiency, and that meet the requirements to the highest degree. For example, our radioisotope thermoelectric generators were chosen as the power source, as they are independent of solar energy, they don't weigh a lot, and they can also fulfill the heat generator role.
So looking into our decisions, we decided to do a trade study on launch vehicles because it's going to be such an influential role into setting our probe up for success to meet heliopause within the 20-year time frame. So we decided on 5 different criteria. The first being cost. You want to keep the cost of the vehicle low. We decided on a maximum payload based on the low Earth orbit, see if our payload can reach that. We decided on reliability to evaluate the launches, the successful to the total amount of launches. The max characteristic energy, due to more energy, would lead to more speed, thus reaching our destination within our time limit. Same idea for stages. More stages would lead to more power, more speed, and so on. We selected 5 alternative launch vehicles, first being the Space Launch Vehicle or Space Launch System, second being Falcon Heavy, then the Starship, the Atlas V, and the Proton M. We originally began with the Pew Matrix simply because we had the basis of the Voyager missions. So we decided we would compare all of our alternatives to the Titan 3E, which is used to launch the Voyager probes. Since we had the established datum, we figured we could just find a better overall system. However, this did not give us our ranking that we initially thought of. We knew the SLS should be higher on this list than what the Pew Matrix gave us, so we decided to use a different method, which was the TOPSIS method. The TOPSIS evaluation method allowed us to include weighting our criteria, where we thought the maximum payload and the max characteristic energy should influence our decision the most. The second most influential decision was the cost. This one is not one of the higher ones due to the unknown variable of time. We're estimating that over time the cost per launch for each vehicle will decrease. And then our lowest settings are the maximum payload, or the reliability, and the number of stages. Both of these criteria are very influential. However, they're not as important as the other criteria. Using this matrix system, we decided that the space launch system was the most effective method for our probe.
So this was the concept architecture that we came up with using our morphological matrix. To the top, you see our 2 main communications dishes, the high gain and medium gain antennas. To the front, you'll see our RTGs and the thrusters needed to keep the spacecraft oriented towards Earth. Coming out of the left and right, the thin beams that you see are the plasma wave and the radio wave detectors. To the left, you see our telescopes that will cover the entire EM spectrum. And to the right, you see our magnetometer boom and the sensor suite for our instruments. Not pictured here is the heat and electrical systems, the fuel storage for the thrusters, the computer controller, data storage, the spectrometer, and its collectors.
So our initial budget is $2 billion. This is based on the cost of Voyager 2, which is estimated at $250 million, roughly $1.1 billion in 2021. The extra funding comes from the fact that we're building one interstellar probe instead of the 2 Voyagers sent, as well as the expensive SLS launch system that we will be using. We are hoping that the support of the government and the general public will lead to companies providing funds in exchange for the right to say that they helped with the development of this interstellar mission. Our main customers and stakeholders will be the U.S. government and potentially other countries' governments should we agree on some data sharing policy. Furthermore, astronomers and astrophysicists who will use this data will also be stakeholders. There are several benefits to stakeholders. Because this is a science-focused mission carried out by a government agency, the benefits will not be in the form of immediate monetary gain, but rather scientific knowledge that benefits the general public and can potentially be used to turn a profit in the future. The first benefit will be that we'll be the first country to perform an interstellar science mission, and the prestige from that alone will appease the more patriotic taxpayers. And the benefits from space exploration have always been difficult to communicate to the general public, but a sort of newsletter that gives updates on what's being discovered and how that information is being used to improve people's lives could help communicate the benefits to the general public. Next slide, please.
New Interstellar Probe has many potential benefits to the scientific community, the government, and the society at large. The probe will provide the highest fidelity scientific data from the outer solar system to date, which will allow astrophysicists and other scientists to obtain a deeper knowledge about the nature of interstellar space. From that, we can improve our understanding of the stellar neighborhood and be aware of the dangers to missions in that region. In addition, we will also be able to answer some of the mysteries about the beginning of the universe, such as star and galaxy formation. And finally, solving the issues that come with high bitrate long-range communications and the low solar energy environment, will lead to technologies that can find use here on Earth in both public and private industries. In presenting our design process, we have shown that our concept is an effective and efficient solution to the issue of losing our access to interstellar space with the Voyagers. We believe that the potential benefits to science and society at large make it a worthy investment of taxpayer dollars.